When I was a kid, my mother used to tell us this Zen Buddhist proverb, and she would, I could tell that she would sort of change it to update it to make it more relevant. So I guess I'll do the same thing here. Uh, my mother's very wise, and she's always telling us like these sort of expressions and proverbs and stories that would contain a truth, if you really thought about them. Well, this was one that had a really big effect on me, and it's served me quite well. So essentially there's this wise man, and he's sitting in lotus position right underneath a tree on the top of a hill, and there's a path that goes over the hill and passes by where this wise man is, and then it goes down the hill, and at the bottom of the hill there is a village. And so this one backpacker comes along the path, and he comes up to the wise man who's sitting there, and he says, I've heard a lot of bad things about the people in this village. I've heard that they're really cheap. I've heard that they're very xenophobic. They don't like strangers. I've heard they're really racist. I've heard they steal from people. I've heard a lot of bad things. I'm really kind of worried about this place. Is it true? And the wise man sort of shakes his head and he says, you will find exactly what you have heard. You will find exactly what you expect. So then he goes down the path. About an hour later, another backpacker comes along, and this guy, everything about him is obviously different before he even opens his mouth. He's got a big smile on his face. He's in like a really good mood. He's got a very kind of excited, positive kind of vibe to him. And he says, to the wise man, he says, I'm so psyched about getting to this village. I've heard amazing things. I've heard that people here are like super generous. They'll like give you the shirt off their back. That they're really kind to strangers, very sort of welcoming and nice. And I have friends that passed by through this village like a couple years ago, and they're still kind of friends on Facebook and Instagram with friends that they made like when they went through this village. And I'm so excited about it. Is that true? And the wise man shakes his head and he says, you will find exactly what you have heard. You will find exactly what you expect, right? And the point being, of course, that your attitude towards other people and places shapes how your experience of those people and places a great deal. If you go into a situation with a really shitty attitude and you're really suspicious and defensive and hostile, people are going to give it right back to you very often, right? Whereas if you go in with a very open-hearted, kind attitude, and you're kind of trusting and expecting good things, then very often that's exactly what you'll find. Now, I think the reason why this is true, and I want to right away head off at the pass. I'm not talking about any kind of bullshit like law of attraction, and I think that's complete pseudoscientific garbage. I'm not talking about that at all. Like, if you put off like good energy, you put out positive vibes, you're gonna get it back, or negative vibes and you're gonna get it back. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that this is grounded in ethology. This is grounded in animal behavior, in human behavior. We are an intensely social species, and we are most of us, the vast majority of us, are very good at reading other people's body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, right? There's all these things that we're kind of very finely tuned to being aware of, right? So we are very reciprocal creatures. right? So for the most part, we reciprocate. If somebody smiles at us, we usually smile back. If somebody is respectful to us, we usually are respectful back, right? If somebody's very suspicious of us, we usually are suspicious towards them. The general rule, this is another thing I got from my mother, the general rule that has worked for me as a kind of heuristic, and this is definitely what I've taught my kids, is that you should assume that at any given time, 10% of people are saints, 10% of people are assholes, and 80% of people are reciprocal. Okay, let me explain what I mean by this. So, first with the saints, right? I'm sure every once in a while, human variance being what it is, there are these rare people that emerge from time to time who are just way more spiritually evolved than the rest of us. You know, maybe like a Buddha or a Jesus or you know, like a Muhammad or somebody, you know, somebody who's like just like this super spiritually advanced person who's much better than the rest of us. And I think there's some people who are maybe always in saint mode, right? I think they're incredibly rare. I think there's some people who are in saint mode often. And what I mean by this is that by a saint, I mean this is somebody who, no matter how mean you are to them, they're going to be nice to you. You can treat them with horrible disrespect, and they're going to treat you with respect, right? So they're not reciprocal in that sense, right? They give out a great deal of goodness and love, regardless of what they're getting. So you can treat them well, and they will treat you well. You can treat them horribly, and they will still treat you well, right? Now, I think everybody is a saint sometimes, right? If you're in love, if you're like newly in love and you're kind of madly in love, you're walking on air, you're probably a saint to some extent. You're, you know, nothing can touch you. You're bulletproof. Like, people can be rude to you at work. You can get cut off and try. You don't give a shit. You're walking on air. You're in such a good place, right? If you just, I don't know, won $10 million in the lottery, or you just got your dream job, you just got like the call and you've been hired, your dream job, or you just got into the program of your dreams, the university or the program that you really wanted to get into in college or university, and you just got that envelope or that call, and you are, or maybe you're just, I don't know, you're just high or you're drunk or something like that, whatever. I think all of us sometimes are saints for when you're just in such a good place that like nothing can touch you. And so somebody can be totally rude to you, and you're just going to be really kind to them in return. You just don't care, right? So 10% of people, you should assume, at any given time are saints. 10% of people at any given time are assholes, right? Now, once again, I think there are full-time assholes, just like there are full-time saints. Sometimes there's some people that they just seem to be like just shitty all the time, just like really kind of mean and nasty all the time. There's some people who are like that quite a lot. I definitely have seen, especially like a certain kind of old person that is in a lot of pain physically, and they're very isolated, and they're just like in a bad place where they're chronically lonely and uncomfortable, and that just makes them, you know, total assholes, right? Everybody's an asshole sometimes. Pretty much everybody's an asshole sometimes. So if you just got dumped, if you just found out that your best friend got run over by a car, if you just got fired, if you just got a rejection letter from the university or college program of your dreams, or you just didn't get the job you were really psyched about getting, or you know, you just got your heart broken. I mean, there's so many. Or you could just, you know, be sick, right? If you're really sick with the flu, or you're physically very uncomfortable, you've got a migraine headache, or you, right? There's so many reasons, but like, everybody's an asshole sometimes. And when you're an asshole, you are, it doesn't matter how people treat you, you're gonna treat them like garbage. You're gonna be, so somebody can be incredibly polite and kind to you, and you're gonna respond with nastiness and vitriol, right? You're not gonna reciprocate at all, right? So I think you should assume, right, that 10%, at any given time, 10% of people are saints, 10% of people are assholes, but that's only 20% of people, right? The vast majority of people, 80% of people, so in other words, most people, most of the time, are neither saints nor assholes. They are reciprocal, which means they are gonna give you what you give them, right? If you treat them with respect, they're gonna treat you with respect. If you treat them with suspicion, right, they're gonna treat you with suspicion. If you are constantly sort of, if you have like the proverbial kind of microscope out and you're constantly sort of evaluating people's words and behavior and trying to sort of catch them up and looking for opportunities to be offended and to be pissed off, chances are you're going to actually elicit precisely the kinds of responses that you are looking for. Right? So you're gonna create assholes where there were none, you might say, because of your behavior. Right? Now, once you have that in mind, I think it just, for me at least, it's helped me to sort of get my head right when I'm getting into a situation. Like, for instance, I always tell new teachers at John Epic College, or anybody I know who's going into teaching, if you go into the classroom with like a really shitty attitude, like if you go into the classroom and you basically assume that students are all a bunch of lazy, good for nothing, kind of cheaters who are like, if you go in with that kind of attitude into the situation, they will pick up. Students are dumb, like they'll pick up on that, and they'll pick up on that kind of hostility and that suspicion and that disrespect, and they will give it right back at you, right? And they'll like, I don't know how many times I've had like a new teacher saying, "Oh my God, I have so many kind of classroom discipline problems, and people are so disrespectful." And my first question is, well, are you showing your students respect? Right? Are you talking to them in a respectful way? Because from what you told me yesterday, you confiscate all of their cell phones and you talk to them as if they're like 5-year-olds. Like, that doesn't sound very respectful at all, right? So, okay, now, having laid out that basic sort of 80%, 10%, 10% theory, I need to throw in some caveats into this, important caveats. Obviously, that percentage is just a heuristic. It's just a sort of a rule of thumb, right? Just sort of as a way of thinking about things, a thought experiment, you might say. But I will add these caveats that definitely, depending upon a number of factors, your kind of race, your class, your gender, your sexual orientation, your religious affiliation, language, accent. There's all these factors that I think go into, that can sort of tweak those numbers, you might say, and can push them in various directions. So I would say the sort of the 80-10-10 rule applies primarily when you are in situations where you, to a large extent, fit in with that group or that person or that kind of community. If you are, let's say, if you are like a different different race or a different religion, or if you are, I don't know, if you're in, like, let's say, if you're going into like a super homophobic community and you you come off as being like really, really gay, you've got like a rainbow flag t-shirt and, pink hair, and you talk in a very, very effeminate way. So you sort of present as being very stereotypically gay. Or if you go into a very racist community and you're a very racist white community, let's say, and you're black, or you're Mohawk, or you're, something other than white, or, you fill in the blanks. You get my point, right? If you go into a community like that and you have these various kinds of markers, which that might, I think that would, almost definitely tweak those numbers a little bit, so that maybe more people would be likely to be assholes towards you. So maybe rather than sort of 10%, you might be dealing with more like, 20%. And maybe fewer people would be likely to behave in a saintly fashion towards you. They maybe wouldn't be as charitable or as nice. I think that's absolutely true. But I don't think that actually invalidates the rule at all. I think it complicates it, and it means that yes, if you're dealing with barriers presented by various kinds of prejudice and bigotry, I think that absolutely tweaks those numbers for sure, in directions that are, not pretty. I 100% agree with that. I would still contend, though, that if you go into the situation and you try to sort of assume the best of people, and if you assume that most people are going to be reciprocal, and if you resist the urge to treat people with suspicion, and if you are as charitable as possible to people, I think those numbers, maybe they don't end up being like 80-10-10, but I still think the majority of people, let's say 2/3 at least, of people, even when you are encountering barriers. I was actually talking with a student of mine who, Muslim student of mine who wears the hijab, and she said that her mother told her, like, basically the same wisdom as my mom. Like, I mean, she had like a different story. It wasn't a Zen proverb. It was like an Egyptian kind of parable that she heard like from her mom and stuff like that. And the details were different, but basically the thrust of it was the same, was that most of the time people are gonna give you what you give them. And she said, she, even like with the hijab and like seeming very much foreign and Arab and Muslim, and even when there's tensions and Islamophobia has been like really intense in Quebec, she said, it's been amazing to her how even despite those handicaps, she's gone into like completely white francophone small towns in Quebec and in, out in the countryside and rural areas, and she's gone in like that positive traveler who, says, oh, I've heard so many amazing things about this village. I'm so psyched. I can't wait to go. What am I gonna find? And she said, I've received some dirty looks. I've received some nasty comments like I'm a fucking terrorist, stuff like that. She goes, sure, I've received some of that stuff. I've even received uglier things than that. I had a guy throw a can of Coke, like half full can of Coke, at my head from a moving vehicle. And she said, I've definitely experienced like some shittiness and some Islamophobia and badness, but those bad experiences are just totally overwhelmed by thousands and thousands of really positive experiences that I've had from people, even people who looked at me like a little bit, askance at first, right? So I think this is a solid rule, and I think if you implement it, I think you'll find that the world is a less scary place. You're still going to meet assholes. That's baked right into this theory. But you'll meet far less if you refrain from acting like an asshole yourself. All right, here ends the lesson.